We hear some squeaking noises in the middle of the zoo where we can see dangerous animals like tigers roaming around inside their habitats. Then, a mop is seen cleaning the dirty floor, and it is being operated by our hero Raynell, who is right next to a cage. She tells us that she is lucky because her manager had asked her to take over his shift due to some last-moment development. Regardless, our hero is more than happy to do this, even though most others would believe that it's a waste of time to do someone else's work. This is because she is totally a fan of wild animals, primarily because they look cool and strong. Whether it's a lion, wolf, or a tiger, our hero is more than happy to be in the company of such majestic creatures because she believes they are perfect beasts. As expected, Raynell continues with his job and comments that her dream has always been to become a zookeeper no matter how dangerous the task might be. This immediately turns out to be a bad sentiment in hindsight, because a mysterious beast appears in front of her and seemingly attacks her without being shown. Suddenly, Raynell opens her eyes and finds herself inside a forest. This doesn't make any sense to her, because she was in the zoo not too long ago. She decides to check her phone for clues, but when she moves her hand, she hears a fluttering sound and gets confused. That's when she realizes that she has actually turned into a crow as she takes a look at her new wings and is totally shocked. She then goes to the river to get a closer look at what's happened to her, and cannot believe the cursed luck she's been given. Raynell tries to figure whether she has been reborn as a crow, or whether her consciousness was simply transferred to one. Frustrated with her situation, our hero lets out a scream, but all that can be heard is a timid caw because of her genetics. Raynell laments the fact that she had to be turned into such a useless creature, whereas in manga story, the hero is usually reincarnated as an overpowered playboy with an endless supply of harem girls. Our hero begins to weep as she curses her luck for not even turning him into a cool beast like a wolf or a lion. Raynell then imagines herself in a surgery room with a doctor and a nurse, but even they say that there's nothing to be done about this body. Our hero tries to talk to the surgeons, but she can only call like the crow she is. Back to reality, Raynell considers her new life and is horrified to learn that she has to change her diet from yummy cooked meals to rodents, vermin, and bugs. As expected, this makes her furious beyond imagination, and she vows to pluck out the eyes of the god who did this to her, although she does maintain that she wouldn't eat the eyes. All hope is not lost though, as Raynell remembers that crows can also eat nuts and fruits. Unfortunately, she is unable to find any of them around, so she decides to use her new body's main power, which is to fly. Raynell spreads her wings and takes off into the sky, feeling amazed by what she is capable of. She feels good now that she has a rush of adrenaline, and wonders if flying to birds is what drugs are to humans. While she ponders about this philosophical question, Raynell hears some distant cries coming from nearby and goes closer to it. She spots some people trying to look for someone, and he figures that she will have a much better life becoming someone's pet rather than scavenging for food. Our hero swoops down, hoping to find a sugar daddy, even though she realizes that crows aren't exactly the most sold pets on the planet. However, as Raynell comes closer to the humans, she notices that they are actually muscular orcs who are looking for their friend. Our hero really can't catch a break, because orcs have no business in the human world. Despite her luck, Raynell figures that she has been transported to a fantasy world, as this place cannot be found on a map. She also realizes that since orcs are popular across all mediums, it's hard to say whether this is a game, novel, manga, or an anime. Regardless, she is thankful to be able to understand what the orcs are saying, because the person they are looking for is not a friend, but rather a foe. This soldier seems to be powerful enough to kill orcs, and it explains why they've come out in numbers to take his head. Raynell senses an opportunity here to find the wanted soldier and warn him about the orcs, so that she can charm him with her behavior and secure him as a sugar daddy. The plan seems to come into immediate effect as Raynell spots a charming blonde boy in the middle of the jungle. He is shown to be injured, and he explains to us that he was ambushed by a count named Faroon who had offered a hunting session to his victim. The blonde prince blames himself for giving in to someone else's trust so easily, because he believes this is all part of a scheme hatched by a villain named Llewellyn. It is hinted that Llewellyn is the same person who had caused Raynell to turn into a crow, as we see his image next to a demon wolf. The blonde warrior laments that he might just meet his end due to his injuries, but then Raynell shows up in her crow body. What's even more interesting is the fact that she seems to have seen this man before and cannot believe her own eyes. The man takes a look at Raynell, but all he can see is a crow, which is believed to be a scavenger bird that likes to feed off dead bodies. He imagines a horrifying image of crows with demon eyes celebrating their association with death, and he worries that he will also be eaten by Raynell. He wants to shoo her away, but is unable to do so because of the orcs nearby. The blonde prince fears that he will call the attention of the orcs, and it only gets worse when Raynell starts to make noise by cawing away. He considers getting rid of Raynell in order to keep the silence, but to his surprise, the crow girl spreads her wings and flies away. This attracts the attention of the orcs, who follow after her, thinking that she will lead them to a body. This is good news for the blonde prince, who wonders if the crow was sent as an angel rather than a demon. Anyway, Raynell is more than happy to lead the stupid orcs away from her Prince Charming, and she continues with her flight. In the middle of this, our hero also tries to remember where she saw the blonde prince, because she's definitely seen him in a game or a manga. The key to surviving in this world is by connecting with this man, so Raynell decides to stick to him, and she tries to convince herself that this is not just because of his good looks. Our hero blushes with excitement while the orcs following her wonder if they are doing the right thing. They eventually decide to stick to their guns, but this was clearly a bad idea, as they are led to a cliff. The orcs argue with each other over who had suggested following the crow, and Raynell simply mocks them for being idiots as she flies away into the bright sky. She is motivated to meet the blonde prince because he is the key to her survival and possible transformation back into her human form. She rushes back to the spot, but doesn't find the blonde prince in his position. He has left behind a trail of blood, and it makes Raynell wonder if she should have focused on his wounds or the orcs. Regardless, she wants to help the blonde prince survive, so she goes to get some herbs which should help stop the bleeding. However, she doesn't really have much knowledge about plants, as wild animals are her area of expertise. Raynell does seem to have an idea of what plants are herbs and what plants are poisonous, so she uses her crow powers to pick the herbs. Of course, she doesn't know if these herbs will help the blonde prince, but she will worry about that later, because something is better than nothing. As she figures her rescue mission, we move to the blonde prince who is showing off his Chad bod while cleaning his wound next to nearby river. He is happy because his body scent will not be found so easily by the orcs anymore, and he only has Raynell to thank for this, as he would have definitely died fighting the orcs with his wounded body. It's a bit ironic that he was saved by the symbol of death, but life works in mysterious ways. So the blonde prince makes a plan to escape the orcs and move to a safer place. He is then surprised to see some medicinal herbs falling onto his head, and he looks up to see Raynell waving at him with a crow smile. The blonde prince cannot believe his luck, and he is certain that a crow cannot be so intelligent. He comes up with a few theories, believing that the crow might be someone's familiar, or even a polymorph dragon. But there is no time to play guessing games, so he assumes that his theories are wrong because such creatures are extremely rare to find. The blonde prince gets dressed, but is still curious about the crow and why she is helping him. Raynell literally adds the cherry to the cake when she drops some berries in front of her new master, and he picks them up, assuming this is a gift. The new couple seems to understand each other's words and actions, so the blonde prince eats the berries and enjoys the sweetness. The both of them are now close buddies, and they carry out their survival together in the jungle. While Raynell brings herbs and fruits for her new master, he hunts down animals and feeds them to her. This is great for our hero as she no longer has to worry about eating bugs. Eventually, the blonde prince starts calling her by her name, and this makes her blush even with her black crow face. This feeling is so amazing that it makes Raynell wonder as if a K-pop idol is calling out to her. She melts out of love and even admits to being an easy crow for her man to violate. On the other hand, the blonde prince feels very comfortable around Raynell and pets her out of love. She is visibly enjoying the gesture a bit too much, and it makes the blonde prince consider abandoning his life in the imperial palace because people have been using him for their own advantage over there for far too long. However, he remembers that his knights died fighting for him, and he owes them that much to go back and fight Llewellyn before he takes over the kingdom and all the innocent people living in it. After being sure that he will return to the imperial palace, the blonde prince mentions that Llewellyn might have already declared him to be dead in order to take over all his property and belongings. He then talks about a hidden power inside that he must awaken if he is to emerge victorious over the evil villain. We learn that this power is of the imperial family, and it is the ability to turn into a wolf. It starts to get dark, and Raynell wonders if she should go fetch some more herbs, but then she notices something shiny in the forest. It appears to be a precious jewel, but our hero is too far away to make a fair judgment. Raynell isn't too keen on taking this jewel because she'd much rather look for food and herbs, but the problem is that she's in a crow's body, which means that she has some natural instinct. These instincts take over her body, and Raynell rushes down to play with the jewel, even though she believes this is highly ridiculous. Our hero laments that she has to do such silly things even though she is a proper human, and she demands to have her body back. However, she quickly identifies that her new toy is not a jewel, but rather a precious berry which has the ability to awaken hidden characters or powers. Raynell knows this because she saw this berry in a game, and it changes the final result of the game depending on who she gives it to. Our hero also explains that if the berry remains with a person who isn't very likable, then they meet a cruel fate such as getting locked up for a crime they didn't commit. Now, Raynell reveals that she was on the receiving end of many such cruel fates as it took her a whole year to give the berry to someone else, so that she could complete the game. Our hero suddenly remembers that she played this game over 3 years ago, so she doesn't remember much from it. She then curses the gods because she feels like she is being used as a joker in a comedy show for these gods. Raynell might not remember the game's name, but she does remember her master's name, and she finally reveals it to be Ival. It turns out that he was a side character in the same game, and he was the emperor of the kingdom as well. However, as per the current scenario, Ival still appears to be a prince on the run, so there's time for Raynell to experience a life of luxury. Raynell feels bad for her master as she remembers his troubles during the game, and then she decides to give him the shiny berry. This might help Ival awaken his wolf powers and make him take hold of his kingdom once again. Our hero believes that if he is able to do this, then he might even use his authority and power to send her back to her world where she can be happy with wild animals once again. Raynell takes the berry to Ival, and he is shocked to see it because even the Lord Majesty cannot get his hands on something so rare. The blonde prince is now certain of the fact that Raynell is not a simple crow, but rather a dragon, or something not from this world. He knows that if he eats this berry, then his fate will take a turn, but it can go either way, so it's a huge risk. Despite knowing that he might die from eating the berry, Ival does so, but not before he asks Raynell to live a free life if he ends up passing away. Now, the blonde prince is overcome by a sense of immense power as he starts to glow in front of Raynell. She remembers how much of a playboy he became when she was playing the game, but shifts the focus back to how powerful the blonde prince is becoming because of the berry. The glow is so strong that it even drives the nearby birds away, but it also attracts some beast men who look like hyenas with a bad haircut. Raynell is confused as to what she should do in this situation, and thinks about flying away to safety, because she is confident that Ival will complete his awakening and turn into an overpowered werewolf. However, she also remembers the kind words he just said to her, and it makes our hero simp for her prince. She decides to keep the hyena men distracted with her flapping powers, and even though it isn't anything of use, Raynell only needs to maintain this distraction long enough for Ival to awaken his powers. Raynell unleashes her flapping powers upon the monsters, and a giant sparkle takes over Ival's entire body. A fascinating sequence follows as the blonde prince is about to be transformed into an overpowered werewolf. But the issue here is that the process is extremely painful for him. He is unable to bear the pain, and wishes to die this very moment, but decides against it when he remembers the sacrifice his soldiers had put in for him. Ival gets motivated by these memories and vows to make their deaths count, so he pushes forward and withstands the pain so that he can complete his transformation and bring honor to his family's name. A dramatic burst of light blinds everyone, and then we witness a narrative text. It explains that God had created many magnificent beasts, but the wolf was the most prominent one of them all. On top of that, the wolf was also a beast that had shared its powers with select humans who had godly blood flowing through their veins. This had actually led to the birth of people like Ival who were naturally chosen to carry out their leadership roles. After this narration, we witness an intense transformation that turns Ival into a giant werewolf with power so great that he defeats all the hyena monsters with a single blow. After the blinding lights dim down, Raynell is relieved that her lover boy has gained his true powers, but she is also bleeding badly, so she falls to the ground having completed her mission to distract the monsters. Ival turns back into a blonde prince and saves Raynell from falling to the ground, after which he laments the fact that she chose to stay behind and defend him so that he could complete his wolf powers. He is clearly upset that a bird as intelligent as our hero would stay back for an emotional reason, but there's no time to sit and complain about what has happened, so Ival decides to take Raynell with him so that he can fix her up. The couple walks away, and then Raynell wakes up having recovered from her earlier injuries. She's a bit confused to see where she is, and wonders for how long she was knocked out. The crow hero's body starts to ache with great pain, but then she opens her eyes to see Ival with a doctor who looks shady, but seems effective. A blonde prince is heard asking the doctor to take care of Raynell because she is very dear to his heart and he cannot afford to lose her just yet. Our hero has no idea what the doctor is going to do to cure her, but the funniest part is that her words can still be heard as a crow cawing its heart out. The doctor proceeds to perform healing magic on Raynell, and she is shocked just as much as we are when she realizes that the mage doctor is actually serving Ival. It doesn't take long for our hero to recover, and she lets out screams of joy, after which she flies towards Ival to get some love. The blonde prince asks the crow girl to calm down because all he can hear are her cawing sounds. However, he understands that Raynell cares for him, so he calmly takes her in his arms and gives her a nice hug. After reassuring our hero that they are in a safe place, Ivel further explains that the house they're in belongs to one of his knights, and the doctor he used for her injuries is actually a priest with magical powers. The priest acts shy upon hearing some praises from Ivel, and tries to play down the issue by saying he would never have used his powers on a crow had it not been for his master Ivel. Now, Raynell takes a moment to soak in what's happened and is glad that she doesn't feel any pain, almost as if her body is brand new now. At first, she wonders if this is because holy powers were there to heal her, and then we see the priest bidding farewell to Ivel as he's done with his job. The blonde prince promises to pay the priest for his services and waits for the door to shut. This is because he wants to hug Raynell out of relief that she is alive. Ivel exclaims how happy he is that his trusted crow is by his side because he was very worried about whether she was going to wake up. As expected, this puts our hero in a trance as she cannot believe her boy crush is showing her so much love. This is a bit too much for her to handle and all types of thoughts explode in her head, probably because this is as close as she's ever going to get to a boy who looks like an idol. Such an experience makes Raynell consider fainting again because she's a virgin and has never even been touched before. This explains why a simple hug from an attractive prince is more than enough for her to lose steam. She starts to feel dizzy and begs the gods of modesty to save her. But the biggest problem here is that she is still in the body of a crow, which means there isn't much she can do to exploit the moment. She turns into a depressed bird and curses the fact that one day, Ivel is going to marry a human lady and make many babies with her. This is an honor that Raynell wants to enjoy, but she doesn't have the biology for it, so she has to be happy with being a pet for now. All these anxious thoughts take Raynell on a roller coaster of emotions that eventually turns out to be a bit too much for her to handle. This results in Raynell breaking free from Ivel's arms while screaming how she's in an unfair world. However, Ivel misinterprets her caw sounds and wonders if he had squeezed her too hard during the hug. Raynell continues to cry in a hilarious fashion, and the blonde prince apologizes for his hug without realizing her true intentions. Now, our hero decides to break the fourth wall, and she says that if her life were to be made into a manga series, then it would be called The Crow's Prince, which is in fact true. Now, Ivel has a heartful session with Raynell and explains how he is thankful to her for all the help she has offered him. This extends to each and every act she has committed for him. And he also expresses an apology for not thanking her enough for her efforts. There is one thing that Ivel can offer, and that's his loyalty. He promises Raynell that he will never neglect her, and it makes the crow girl blush out of embarrassment. This is a dream come true for our hero, because she knows that Ivel is as perfect as they come. She proudly perches herself on top of his shoulder and snuggles up to him, hinting that she has forgiven him for putting her in danger. However, Raynell is also determined to keep the blonde prince to herself, and she will not let him ever get close to another woman for as long as she lives. Our hero becomes a bit too dramatic, and her behavior somewhat heats up the room as pointed out by Ivel. There's more to add to the drama though, as we hear knocking on the door, followed by a handsome young man stepping into the room. He addresses Ivel as Her Majesty and expresses his joy over seeing his lord safe and sound. The young man's name is revealed to be Windsor, and Ivel is also glad to see him after so long. However, Raynell seems to recognize Windsor, and it doesn't take long for her to identify his full name and reveal to us that he is also a character from the game she used to play. Her first guess is that Windsor might have been a knight, but doesn't seem to recall what his personality was like. She doesn't have to wait for long, because Windsor drops to the floor and apologizes to Ivel for being unable to protect him when times were bad. He is genuinely upset with himself, but takes it a step too far by declaring he should be killed for committing a sin so seriously. He even points his own sword at his neck, and while Ivel seems to be neutral in this regard, Raynell cannot take such a sight because it is her job to ensure that all handsome men are protected under her watch. Before she can do anything dramatic herself, Ivel luckily steps in and slaps the sword away from Windsor's hands. He proceeds to berate him for taking things so seriously, but also says that he appreciates his concern. This is good news for our hero, as she believes that even Ivel doesn't want handsome men to die for no reason. Windsor is still feeling guilty, but Ivel reassures him that the situation was not under his control as he had already been sent away on His Majesty's orders. The blonde prince is simply glad because his trusted knight didn't lose and chose to stay with the army rather than giving in to Llewellyn. Windsor is amazed to hear this, and Ivel adds on to the seriousness of the scene by making him promise to always stand by his side and protect him, no matter what. This overwhelms Windsor, so he immediately picks up his fallen sword and offers it to Ivel as a form of subservience. He then vows to protect his prince no matter what the cost, even if it turns out to be his own life. It is this behavior that reminds Raynell of Windsor's character in the game. He is supposed to be blindly faithful to Ivel, and is willing to lay down everything to keep him safe. The blonde prince is a little taken aback by what he has just heard, and asks Windsor if he will be the same way even if he were never to use his wolf powers again. Windsor blindly answers in subjugation, so Ivel proudly anoints him as his knight. It's a wholesome moment, but Raynell is a little confused because Ivel can definitely transform into a werewolf now. so it doesn't make sense for him to hide this fact from his own knights who are to assist him in battle. Unfortunately for our hero, she is still a crow, so it's not like she can ask questions as of now. She decides she'll find out sooner or later anyway, and decides to carry on with her lover boy. Now, Windsor asks Ivel how he was able to escape from the demon soldiers earlier, because he was clearly wounded the last time he saw him. That's when Ivel realizes he hasn't introduced Raynell to Windsor, so he signals to his crow to land on his arm. Windsor is a bit surprised to see such a bond between his highness and a crow, but he also recalls that he had seen Raynell on top of Ivel's shoulder not too long ago. The loyal knight tries his best to hide his doubts, but he is clearly an amateur when it comes to masking his emotions. Ivel spots this and reassures him that he knows the dangers of being associated with an ominous bird. However, he explains how helpful Raynell has been to him right from when she rescued him from the orcs till getting herbs for his recovery. The blonde prince proceeds to give Raynell a pat on her head, and she visibly enjoys the attention, even calling out to Windsor to witness the love. Ivel adds that he would not be alive right now if it wasn't for Raynell, and it makes Windsor gasp out of disbelief. This primarily due to his own perception of the blonde prince, whom he believes is amazing and humble to say the least. Windsor laments that Llewellyn has already summoned his wolf powers, and he is also called the third prince. Then, he continues to praise Ivel by commenting on how he's able to smile even with the bird of death resting on his arm. Things get a little awkward because Windsor hits fanboy mode and even simps for his majesty because he considers his character to be flawless. He believes that even a bird like a crow is willing to serve Ivel, so it only makes sense that he is the chosen leader of his kingdom. As expected, things get a little dark as Windsor sees Raynell as a competitor rather than an ally. He even challenges her to a battle to see who's better suited to serve Ivel. Our hero is visibly disturbed to see such a weird aura from Windsor and fears that she still has a long way to go before she can gain favor with the loyal knight. The time for fun and games are over, so Ivel gets down to asking some serious questions. He wants to know what's been happening since he was away, and Windsor explains that he has been declared missing because his body wasn't found amongst the giant pile of fallen soldiers. This is an interesting piece of information for the blonde prince, and he knows that this is the work of Llewellyn. Windsor adds that the third prince even laid out a search party for Ivel and supposedly begged his father to get to work. But the blonde prince knows very well that Llewellyn is a horrible actor. As a matter of fact, he is certain that the third prince has all but confessed his role in this carefully orchestrated murder mission. However, Ivel also learns that his father granted an imperial sanction to Llewellyn after the whole charade. It's no surprise to the blonde prince because his father only cares about who's going to take the throne next. After hearing all of this, Raynell becomes emotional and laments the sorry state of the royal family. She is saddened by the fact that two brothers have to fight each other for the crown, even though the throne is a highly valued asset. Our hero wants to make her lover boy feel better, so she cuddles against him, and he feels nice to see her love. Ivel pats Raynell on the head and promises her that he is going to come out on top of this situation, because he has no intention to give up the second life that he's been granted. Windsor is simply amazed to see how closely Ivel is hugging the crow, but the blonde prince wants to inform his father that he is still alive. Windsor is worried that Ivel will expose his location, but he is confident that his brother isn't going to try any smart tricks with him in the palace. Ivel is actually hoping for Llewellyn to attack him because then he can just transform into a werewolf and give him a taste of his own medicine. The next day, a carriage is prepared to take our heroes to the imperial palace, and Raynell gets very excited by the prospect. She's always wanted to see what the palace would look like in real life after having played the game, but she also needs to be alert because the enemy is lurking around there. It is this situation that makes her feel thankful for being a crow and not a woman here, because that would have led to a lot of controversy and scandal. Raynell is glad to be a pet for Ivel, and then she happily greets him on top of his luggage. The mood is very romantic for Raynell, but all her dreams come crashing down when she is abruptly locked inside a birdcage. It's a hilarious sequence, and Ivel does apologize for the temporary inconvenience, but Raynell calls him out for being a traitor. She feels that this is a case of karma, because she used to do the same thing to other animals back when she was a zookeeper. However, the crow girl doesn't accept her current situation and hurls abuses at her Prince Charming, even though he can't understand a word. The blonde prince decides to take care of the matter himself, but Raynell becomes a bit too frisky and it leads her to feel very dizzy. It makes her want to throw up and she passes out for a bit, so Ivel decides to let her out of the cage while they're still in the carriage. The blonde prince asks Raynell if she's okay, but she activates her demon crow mode and angrily bites his fingers to express her frustration with the way she's been treated. Ivel nervously lands a few strokes on her, and while she initially acts tough, Raynell eventually gives in and melts to the soft touches of her lover boy. Ivel goes on to explain that he didn't want to leave Raynell behind, which was why he decided to bring her along in a cage. He doesn't even care if she is actually a dragon in disguise and plants a kiss on her beak to show his love. This is a huge moment for Raynell as she totally loses her mind after getting such a sweet kiss from her lover boy. Her craziness continues to dominate her mind, but but Ivel states that there will be some enemies to face once they reach the palace. Raynell realizes that her lover boy is only revealing these facts to her because he thinks of her as a simple bird incapable of speaking. This would never have happened if Raynell was in her human form, but even then, she decides to give Ivel a kiss and snuggles up to him while blushing. She's thankful that these blushes can't be seen through her black feathers, but then her excitement explodes once more when she sees the Imperial Palace. The duo go to Ivel's room and Raynell immediately starts plotting a robbery. But then she reminds herself that she's a human, not a crow. Raynell's mouth starts drooling, but she manages to avoid any embarrassment as Ivel decides to leave her alone for a while. He instructs his butler to take care of Raynell, and also warns him of dire consequences if he's caught mistreating her. The butler shivers out of fear and calls Raynell a bird of death, but he's got his orders, so he gives her some food. Unfortunately, this food turns out to be disgusting worms, and it makes our hero squirm out of disgust. Her cries are heard by Ivel, but he simply thinks he's imagining things. Then, he finally bumps into Llewellyn, who tries to act concerned for his brother. However, Ivel has already played this game before, so he gives a condescending reply, and it makes the third prince visibly annoyed. The blonde prince is glad to have one round one. A narrative text pops up to explain to us how Llewellyn was worshipped as the third prince simply because he had awakened his wolf powers. However, all these praises only made him more complacent, and he didn't make any efforts towards improving his attitude. His arrogance could be seen in the way he would always enjoy himself with harem women, and his lack of maturity raised serious doubts about his character. Now, we move back to the confrontation between Ivel and Llewellyn, where the blonde prince reveals himself to be the narrator. He also mocks the third prince because he is unable to pick up on the fact that his wolf powers have awakened. This is exactly why Llewellyn cannot be expected to be the next in line to succeed the throne. Of course, all of these thoughts are only in Ivel's head because he doesn't want to raise any alarms. However, he does have some fun when he apologizes to his brother for all the trouble he went through. This is clearly sarcasm, as Ivel even states that the search party sent out to look for him was nothing more than a waste of time and resources. The third prince is visibly nervous, but he also doesn't want to expose his evil plans, so he simply smiles and pleads ignorance to whatever Ivel is telling him. The blonde prince doesn't have time to argue with his brother now, but he's ready to give him a taste of his own medicine soon enough. Ivel walks past Llewellyn and says that he'll finish their little chat later because he has to go meet the king right now. The tension is so thick between the brothers that it can be cut with a knife. Ivel comments that things are going to get very interesting for Llewellyn, and then he proceeds towards his father. Now, we see a couple of guards waiting by the door, and they immediately kneel in subjugation towards His Majesty. The blonde prince enters his father's room and proudly announces that he has returned. The king is glad to learn that the first prince has come back to the royal palace, but he doesn't look like he's doing very well. The king battles his sickness and gives his son a smile, but Ivel is concerned about his father's health, so he asks him how he's doing. The king simply replies by saying he's the same. And there's no point in all this small talk because what Ivel is fearing isn't going to happen anytime soon. The king proceeds to say that Ivel has only just hatched out of his egg, hinting that he can sense his son's wolf powers. He also comments that it is Ivel's emotions that let his brother get the better of him. The blonde prince is impressed to see how quickly the king was able to spot his powers, and he mocks Llewellyn in his head but acts innocent when he speaks. This only leads the king to show the typical face of a stern dad, and he calls Ivel a fool. The blonde prince simply laughs and says that such incidents are not going to repeat themselves again. Now, it's time for some serious talk, and Ivel reassures his father that he is going to succeed the throne with great success. However, he also looks him straight in the eye and says that he wants this to happen so that the king can finally meet his queen in the afterlife. These words take the king by surprise, so he calls Ivel a rascal, but the blonde prince simply states that he has always been this way. The father and son joke around for a bit, and then Ivel walks away, but he also imagines what life would have been like if his mom didn't pass away from her illness. He believes the fight for the crown would have been more moderate if she was still alive, but there's no point in crying over spilled milk. A golden aura surrounds the blonde prince as he walks away and announces he's leaving the room. However, this leads the king to start laughing in a strange manner, although this is simply because he can now see potential in Ivel. He starts talking to himself, but it appears as if he's communicating with his dead queen, wishing for her to be alive to see how much her son has changed. That's when we see the queen, who is beautiful beyond belief, explaining why it wasn't hard for Ivel to charm Raynell. The queen approaches her king and states that a wolf only has one partner for life. However, when the partner would die, it would lead the wolf to also fall sick and eventually meet her in heaven. This is exactly what's going on with the king right now. And then we see him wishing for Ivel to get what he truly deserves so that he can finally die in peace, rather than fighting for his life just so that he can offer guidance to his son. He has a romantic vision of being with his wife and yearns to be with her again so that their bond can continue to grow, even in heaven. After this heavily emotional sequence, we move back to Ivel's room, where our favorite crow girl is still in her cage. It doesn't take long for her to entertain us again as she complains about being hungry. Her beak starts to water and she starts thinking about how long it's been since Ivel left. She knows that birds can digest their food almost instantly, which is why her hunger feels as if it's been going on for days. On top of that, Raynell also complains about the butler, who wasn't able to give her anything to eat apart from some disgusting worms. The poor butler can only look on in confusion over Raynell's reluctance to eat the worms, while she wonders if he wants her to starve to death. A dramatic display of tears follows as our hero sobs in her crow voice and wishes for her lover boy to return as soon as possible. However, there's nobody coming to save her from this terrible diet, so she takes a peek into her worm bowl. It's not a very appetizing sight, but Raynell is at her wit's end due to her hunger. She even thinks about taking a bite as her beak continues to drool like a waterfall of saliva. Raynell continues the debate in her mind by saying she technically has a crow's organs, so it shouldn't be that hard for her to enjoy the worms. She places some faith in her taste organs, but then her human form manifests itself as a funny soul and punches her crow body. This snaps her back into her senses, and she can't believe the fact that she had even considered eating the worms. Raynell might be thinking like a human right now, but it won't be long before her crow desires take over again. She worries that she'll end up eating the worms if Ivel doesn't come to the rescue soon. Luckily, a hand pats her from behind, and it's none other than her dashing prince. Ivel is shocked to see Raynell in such a horrible state and comments on how thin she's become in such a short span of time. The blonde prince is aware that his crow doesn't like eating bugs, so he immediately orders the butler to go and fetch some raw meat and fruits. Our hero finally gets some respite when she eats a proper meal and even gets to top it off with some tasty cooking. Raynell is thankful to have maintained her humanity. But then she's in for an even bigger surprise when Ivel invites her into his bed. The crow girl wonders what's going on, but then Ivel says he wants to give her some toys to play with. He opens up a treasure chest and reveals a collection of precious stones that light up the place. Raynell is shocked to see these gems and is blinded by the shiny lights. She wonders how much these gems must be costing, but of course, it wouldn't mean much to a prince like Ivel. Raynell laments that she is a crow who is associated with death, but also feels very loved by Ivel. She starts to fantasize about him loving her as a human, which would ideally be the perfect ending for her. However, our hero breaks the fourth wall once again and says that the manga is not going to turn her into a human. She even knows what episode we're on, but gets interrupted when Ivel asks her if she likes his gift. His gesture lights up her mood, and she's thankful to have become Ivel's trusted bird. It could have been a lot worse for Raynell, so she decides to take things slowly, one day at a time, and picks up a gem. She gives this gem to Ivel, who is so touched by her gesture that his face begins to glow with joy. Raynell finds this a bit odd, as a prince shouldn't be so easy to please. The blonde prince proceeds to give his crow girl a hug and promises to make her the imperial crow once he becomes the king of his empire. Raynell simply gives us a hilariously evil glance and says that this is just the beginning of her plan to make Ivel fall in love with her. The next day, our hero wakes up and stretches her wings to full effect against the backdrop of a pleasant morning. There are tons of rooms in the palace, so Raynell knows she won't get bored so easily. She goes outside to get some fresh air and enjoys the vibe while a guard gets startled by her presence. The guard gets worried that a bird of death is roaming around in the king's garden, so he decides to shoo her away. However, he gets stopped by Ivel, who tells him not to lay a hand on Raynell as she is very dear to him. The guard finds this to be a bit odd, but runs away because he doesn't want to upset the blonde prince. The coast is clear for now, but Ivel knows that this was a close call because Raynell could have easily gotten hurt right now. He realizes that he can't always be there for his crow girl, so he needs to put some kind of marker so that the others will know to treat her like a princess. Ivel's train of thought is interrupted when he hears someone approaching, and it turns out to be Llewellyn. The third prince acts snobby and arrogant, which makes Ivel sense something off about the situation. Raynell also notices him, so she comes up with her own hostile hashtags even though social media isn't a thing here. Ivel decides to enter savage mode, and he asks Llewellyn why he's come here to see him when he could have simply sent someone in his place. He proceeds to mock his brother's abundance of free time, but the third prince answers back by saying he simply wants to spend time with his family. Now, we learn that the youngest member of the royal family is a girl named Sephia. Llewellyn tells Ivel that he only likes to spend time with Sephia because he thinks she's cute and sweet. Ivel isn't too pleased to hear this, and the tension grows thicker between the brothers. Raynell can also see this, and she gets worried about what's going to happen. However, the third prince decides to cut the small talk and get down to business. It turns out that Llewellyn has found out about Ivel promising to stop the battle for the crown, but the blonde prince simply acts tough and says it's about time this was decided. His words seem to get a rise out of Llewellyn, and he expresses his emotions by saying Ivel hasn't even awakened his wolf powers yet. However, the blonde prince isn't one to back down from a fight, and he taunts his brother for being unable to seize the throne even though he had awakened his powers before him. Ivel is absolutely ruthless in destroying the third prince with his words, and he also throws in a hint of sass, which makes Raynell treat this confrontation like a 3D movie. She munches on popcorn and comes up with a new hashtag, because this scene reminds her of K-dramas. Ival isn't quite done yet, as he berates Llewellyn for not being able to seize the throne even though he had gone missing for a considerable amount of time. This is all it takes to trigger the third prince, so he transforms into his wolf avatar and unleashes his powers upon Ival. It's a deadly scene that makes the blonde prince wonder what he should do. He admits that he didn't anticipate such a situation, but he also doesn't want to reveal his wolf powers yet. Just as things are about to get serious, we witness something rather puzzling. Rhaenell attacks the wolf prince with all her might in a hilarious sequence and attacks him with her beak. It confuses Ival, but then our hero reminds us that she managed to hold off the orcs who had attacked Ival earlier. The whole situation is very funny. But Ival knows that his crow girl won't be able to last long against Llewellyn. The wolf prince attacks our hero with full power, but then Ival comes to the rescue and attacks him with a kick. The blonde prince proceeds to ridicule his brother by saying he's the size of a dog, and on top of that, he also got bullied by a crow. The sass goes overboard, so Llewellyn tries to snap back at his brother and even insults Rhaenell for attacking his face. However, Ival scolds him once more and says that he is stronger than the third prince even though his power hasn't awakened yet. Of course, Ival is bluffing about his wolf powers, and then he mocks Llewellyn for not being strong because he seems to be a dog rather than a wolf. The third prince promises revenge, and it makes Ival consider the political situation. He realizes that his brother still has a lot of followers, so he shouldn't try anything funny just yet. The blonde prince then invites Rhaenell to come to him, but rather than thanking her, he scolds the crow girl much to her unpleasant surprise. She even cutely says that Llewellyn was the one who started it. Now, Ival takes Rhaenell to his room and explains to her that she shouldn't have attacked Llewellyn, no matter how stupid he might have been. His intentions are good because he fears that the third prince might target Rhaenell now that she has hurt his pride. However, the crow girl decides to use her cuteness overload powers, and it makes the blonde prince feel bad for scolding her. He does manage to pull himself together and tells Rhaenell that she shouldn't be so reckless because she's risking her life by doing this. Ival also brings up the incident with the orcs, and our hero realizes that he's saying the right thing. As far as the fight with Llewellyn is concerned, Rhaenell explains to us that she's read up on wolves and their weaknesses before, so she knew how to hurt the third prince. Her crow reflexes also helped with the situation, but our hero acknowledges that she did come across as reckless, just like the time she was clumsy as a human with her dog. After realizing Ival's intentions, Rhaenell gently touches his hand with her beak and says sorry. Ival acknowledges her gesture and reassures her that he will always protect her because his wolf powers have awakened now. He carries on with the assumption that Rhaenell is just an intelligent crow, and not a dragon, so he tells her that he doesn't want to lose her to a loser like Llewellyn. Meanwhile, the third prince has a hissy fit and he wrecks his room in a fit of rage over the humiliation he's just had to face. Of course, he blames the crow girl for most of it as he remembers the hilarious attack on him, and then he envisions a future where he is the king. Llewellyn now makes it his first goal to exterminate all the crows from the kingdom once he takes the crown, but then something comes to his mind. Ival had stepped in to save Rhaenell, when he could have simply just watched the battle for his amusement. This makes Llewellyn think of something evil, and then he looks into his mirror to give a command. Suddenly, a demonic old man appears from the mirror, and the third prince orders him to look into the relationship between Ival and Rhaenell. Then, we move to our heroes as the blonde prince writes a letter with the crow girl resting on his shoulders. Our hero is a little tired and wants to go to sleep, but then someone at the door announces the arrival of a marquess named Namiel. Ival lets him in and Rhaenell becomes alert because she's heard this name before. Now, Namiel enters the room and says that he's brought an item that Ival had requested. The blonde prince welcomes Namiel into his room, but Rhaenell has other plans. So she flies to the Marquess and assesses him with a deadly glare. She proceeds to give us an intro on Namiel, starting with his profession, which is that of a magician. It turns out that Namiel was the hero of the original game, and Rhaenell clearly seemed to like how handsome he was in the illustrations. She's even happier to see him in person and is thankful to this fantasy world for showing her handsome men everywhere. Rhaenell is so smitten by Namiel that she starts showing him love without even acknowledging Ival's presence. The magician is pleasantly surprised by this behavior and comments on how friendly the crow girl is. However, the blonde prince doesn't take too kindly to this shameless betrayal and gets up from his seat. He is shocked to see Rhaenell so comfortable with someone other than him, and it clearly makes him jealous. Now, Ival angrily marches towards the crow girl and tells her to stop bothering Namiel. She realizes that she might have let her feelings get the better of her, so she calms down and goes back to Ival. Our hero cutely says sorry to her lover boy and even tries to say that she's a loyal crow who would never cheat on her Prince Charming. These words have no effect on Ival as he holds her beak and says they are going to have a chat later. Namiel finds Rhaenell fascinating and he wants to dissect her, but Ival takes her away and asks for the item he had requested. The magician reveals a precious gem inside a necklace and comments that it must be for someone very precious to the blonde prince. This makes Rhaenell is still shocked to learn that Ival has someone special in his life and is unable to come to terms with the fact that she's not his number one girl. She begins to cry out of hilarious sadness after imagining a world where her blonde prince has left her alone to marry another woman. Of course, the Crow Girl always has her imagination to come to her rescue, so she fantasizes about Ivel promising her that he'll never leave her alone. However, even her own mind plays tricks on her as the fake Ivel asks Raynell to become his child rather than his babe. This makes our hero cry a river of tears in a dramatic presentation, and she even gives herself the hashtag Crow in distress. Of course, all of this is just an unnecessary burst of emotions as the blonde prince simply presents the highly expensive necklace to the Crow Girl and reveals that the special person in his life is in fact Raynell. Our hero is overjoyed to see this and cannot control her excitement now that she knows there's no other woman in her lover boy's life. The Crow Girl celebrates her new present, but the giant necklace grows smaller and fits her perfectly. That's when Namuel reveals that Ivel had actually asked him to get a necklace that could adjust its size based on the person wearing it. The blonde prince states that he actually ordered for the necklace so that everyone in the palace would know how precious Raynell is to him. Our hero is over the moon and she showers her love upon her lover boy. But then Ivel tells Namuel not to show any further interest in his crow. The magician boy has no intention of making his prince upset, but Ivel still suspects something, so he asks Namuel what he wants. This leads to a slightly awkward conversation where Namuel reveals that he doesn't want the future king to think badly of him because it will not lead to a happy ending. Ivel doesn't have time to play games with Namuel, so he asks him to get straight to the point. Now, the magician states that his father asked him not to get into politics. Despite this, he still mentions how his father's wolf powers never awakened, and this was why he never even looked towards the direction of the imperial palace. He goes on to explain that he wanted to follow his father's advice but wasn't able to do so because of Llewellyn. It turns out that the third prince had actually forced Namuel to become a magician and serve under him. But this was simply because he viewed magicians as tools and would use them for his entertainment. Namuel does not want the future king to be a spoiled brat, which is why he's placing his bet on Ivel for now. All of this sounds good in theory, but the blonde prince has seen way too many examples of people being hungry for power. He asks Namuel how he can place so much trust in him, and even says that he might become like his brother after spending too much time as a king. Raynell is confused after hearing this, but figures that Ivel might be testing Namuel's faith with such words. The magician feels the same way because he knows that Ivel would never think in such a manner. Anyway, Namuel decides to offer the ultimate gesture of goodwill and presents a berry to Ivel. However, this is the same berry that Raynell had given her lover boy earlier, which helped awaken his wolf powers. Seeing this makes our hero panic, because her memories start to come back to her. She believes that in the original game, Namuel was the one who had helped Ivel awaken his wolf powers by giving him this exact same berry. Of course, this makes the Crow Girl very anxious because she has already done this, and it makes her wonder if she has kicked off some kind of butterfly effect. Tensions run high, but Ivel knows what he's doing, so he asks Namuel to eat the berry instead. The magician does acknowledge that he has royal blood flowing through him, which means that he might be able to awaken his powers after eating the berry. However, he would much rather prefer to remain a magician rather than become an overpowered wolf. The blonde prince is more than impressed to see someone pass on the opportunity to eat the rare berry, so he acknowledges Namuel as a noble supporter. The magician wants confirmation from the blonde prince as to whether he is now a trusted aide, and Ivel proudly promises to fund him for anything he wants once he becomes the emperor of his kingdom. In return, even Namuel offers his prince all his abilities and knowledge and also asks him to speak in a more casual tone. He jokes that he might be of royal blood, but is nothing more than a commoner in front of the blonde prince. Ivel happily agrees to this, and then he has a look at the rare berry. He wonders who he should give this berry to because it has to be someone who can never betray him under any circumstance. He has to be careful, because he is playing with immense power over here, so his attention turns to Raynell, who is the only person worthy of his trust. This is a tricky situation for Ivel because he doesn't know how the berry will react to a crow, but at the same time, it makes him curious. On a completely different note, the Crow Girl is still worrying about the butterfly effect she has kicked off. Then, in a hilarious sequence, she gets drawn to the berry and feels a strange aura take over her body. This leads Raynell to snatch the berry from Ivel and swallow it, even though he warns her that it might kill her. The Crow Girl now has an overpowered berry inside her tummy, and it makes the blonde prince panic. He doesn't want to lose his Crow Girl, so he hilariously opens her mouth and begs her to spit and not swallow. He promises to do anything the Crow Girl desires, and then he has a panic attack. Ivel cannot stand the thought of losing Raynell because she is the only person who has ever shown him true love. The situation actually gets a little too dramatic, and then Ivel hugs Raynell, hoping for the best. However, after such an intense session, the only thing that our hero does is burp in Ivel's face. The blonde prince is a bit surprised by this, because a berry as powerful as this one should have brought out some kind of response. That doesn't happen to be the case, so Ivel can breathe a sigh of relief for now. He begs Raynell never to swallow anything so abruptly, and then the Crow Girl comes back to her own senses. It turns out that she had actually passed out after eating the berry, but doesn't feel anything weird yet. Her body is also the same, so there's no reason for her to worry, apart from the possible timeline mess she created earlier. However, Raynell is actually a little disappointed because she wanted to awaken her own powers and become like a Godzilla version of a crow. She even thinks of a catchy name for her movie and calls it Crowzilla, The Revenge of the Bird of Death. However, this is no time to joke around, so she casually chills on the bed and wonders if she is actually the female protagonist of this story alongside Ivel. There's always a calm before the storm, so Raynell's body starts hurting in a similar fashion to how Ivel's did when his wolf powers had awakened. The blonde prince is visibly concerned to see his crow girl in pain, so he pats her with love, but nothing seems to happen. The worst part is that Raynell isn't even transforming, which means her power is not coming to life. Basically, our hero just has an upset stomach and Ivel tells her that this is why she shouldn't just swallow anything she likes. Anyway, the blonde prince has to heal his crow, so he calls his wizard doctor to do his thing. However, the wizard says that there's nothing wrong with Raynell because her body is not reacting to his healing spells. Our hero is looking worse than a zombie, so Ivel can only think of one possible reason for her fever. He acts fast and tells his doctor to leave them alone. The blonde prince then sulks on the bed and blames himself for causing pain and suffering to Raynell. He believes he shouldn't have been too casual with the berry in front of his crow girl and wonders what's going to happen next. He can't really do anything now, but wait and watch what happens with Raynell, who is clearly not looking like she's having a good time. Ivel only feels worse with each passing moment and can't deal with the pain of seeing his trusted bird in such a state. He begs Raynell to wake up from her fever and even says that he'll allow her to play tricks on him for as long as she wants. Unfortunately, our hero doesn't open her eyes, so Ivel falls asleep next to her in bed. The scene suddenly shifts to a starry galaxy where we see an angel girl who is revealed to be Raynell. She takes a look at her hands and is shocked to see that they aren't crow wings. All of this makes her think that she has died from consuming the berry, and she is clearly upset with the way things have gone for her because she still wants to live. Our hero goes on a rant talking about how her life as a crow wasn't the best and also laments the fact that she didn't even do anything with her lover boy, other than a few hugs and kisses. This is not the end for Raynell as a giant flash of light appears in front of her and we see a bright sequence that is mixed with alternate images of a crow spreading its wings. This is a bit confusing for Raynell, but then she opens her eyes to a narrative voice that explains how a giant black bird ended up helping a wolf overcome his troubles and gain a new perspective. As part of their partnership, the bird would feast on corpses that were given some power by the wolf. This was to ensure that when such creatures would pass away, their bodies wouldn't cover the land. Basically, the corpses would not be a burden to the living as a result of this, and then the narrative text explains that the blackbird gave birth to smaller birds which would go on to be called crows. These crows would scatter pieces of their shells all over the world so that someday, their descendants would eat these pieces and awaken their inner powers. By now, we've gotten the hint that these shell pieces are in fact the power berries. After Raynell is given this explanation, she is hit with a burst of energy and then an intense sequence follows. We move back to the real world where Ivel is still by the bed, but then he wakes up to the sound of some fluttering wings. He tries to come back to his senses and wonders if Raynell is all right. But when he looks at the bed, he sees something he never would have imagined. We can see that Raynell has finally transformed from a crow girl to an actual girl and is sleeping peacefully in bed. Ivel is clearly shocked to see her and wants to know who this is because he's clearly never seen our hero in her human form. Ivel has to consider all possible situations, so he wonders if the crow girl is actually an assassin. However, after he takes a look at her soft hands, he realizes that can't be the case. More than anything else, it doesn't make sense for an assassin to sleep next to her target, but the most important thing is that Raynell is wearing the same necklace her lover boy had gifted her through Namuel. It is this sight that makes the blonde prince wonder if this is actually his crow girl in her human form. Ivel places his hands on our hero's hair and comments that it feels exactly like his crow's feathers. He wonders if this transformation has happened because of the power berry. But then things get interesting when Raynell finally wakes up. She asks Ivel if it's time to eat and is quick to notice that she is rubbing her eyes with human fingers, and not crow wings. Our hero realizes that she is indeed a human now, but instead of hugging or kissing her lover boy, the first thing she wants to do is check out a mirror. Raynell is just as funny as a human, so Ivel has to calm her down and take her to his mirror. He lets the crow girl take a good look at herself and even smiles at her to reassure our hero of his intentions. Raynell is unable to believe what she's seeing because she has clearly gotten an amazing glow up from what she used to look like on Earth. With silky smooth skin and the hair of a crow goddess, Raynell wonders if this is because of the power berry she ate. Despite this, she is not sure if her power has awakened and feels frail in her body. More than anything else, she's actually upset because she doesn't have any of the strength she had gained from her time at the zoo lifting feed and handling animals. Ivel has no idea what his crow girl is talking about, but she continues to complain in a funny and cute fashion. She tries to look at the positive side because she has finally become a human after all the stress she had to go through as a crow. She is thankful that she doesn't have to go inside cages or eat smelly worms anymore. But she is also happy that she can finally get romantic with her lover boy in the way she had imagined. Ivel is right behind our hero and he looks at her with a charming smile. after which he asks her if she's done examining herself. Raynell is overcome with emotions and she is happy to finally be able to say whatever she wants to the blonde prince. She makes the most of her opportunity and rushes to hug Ivel out of relief. The blonde prince is a bit taken aback by this gesture, but Raynell doesn't care because she can finally call out his name as much as she wants. It takes a while, but the crow girl finally calms down and Ivel asks her if she's feeling better. Her eyes are hilariously puffy due to all the excessive and dramatic crying, so the blonde prince asks her why she was getting so emotional in the first place. He wants to know if it was because of this sudden transformation, but Raynell dismisses that suggestion. Our hero does a quick recap of everything that has happened with her right from when she had transformed into a crow in a fantasy world till this very moment where she is back to being a human, although in a much more beautiful form. Of course, this is not going to sound very pleasant coming from her mouth, because nobody wants to be told that they're a character in a game where their only purpose is to suffer for the sake of entertainment. Also, the story is a bit too long to explain, so Raynell decides against it. Instead, she comes up with another story and tells Ivel that she was scared because she had almost died from the power of the berry. To her surprise, the blonde prince says that he was also scared for her and the world went dark for him the entire time he was by her side. He is relieved that not only has Raynell opened her eyes, but now she is able to talk to him as well. The charming prince brings out one of his playboy moves and pulls our hero into his arms. He is happy to have her by his side and even thanks her for making it through safe and sound. As can be expected, this makes Raynell blush with excitement and she loses her mind. Our hero starts making weird noises and even feels dizzy from the rush of emotions. Ivel was charming enough to her when she was a crow, but now that she has a human perspective, all she wants to do is pounce on him and ravage him like a beast. Raynell tells us that these thoughts are only partly true, but we can safely assume what she's thinking. Our hero is a little insecure because Ivel is much better looking than she is, but the blonde prince thinks that she's feeling awkward because of their hugging position. He wants to know if he's making his crow girl feel uncomfortable, and then Raynell states that he's making her feel like an animal. Our hero must act fast, otherwise her heart will explode out of excitement, so she wishes to become a crow again just to feel calmer. Her wish surprisingly comes true, as Raynell instantly turns back into her crow form, much to everyone's surprise. Our hero is now crying in yet another comedy of errors as she wonders what has just happened to her, especially when things were going so well between her and Ivel. Now, Raynell starts flapping her wings in an erratic sequence, because she cannot believe that she's become a crow again. She wonders if this was all just a dream, or even worse, a trial run for her to become human. Since our hero loves to imagine dramatic situations, she thinks of her human body as a product which can only be purchased from the App Store at a premium price. After the excessively funny imaginings, Raynell wonders if she has to pay more cash in order to extend her time in the human body. She cannot control the disappointment anymore and starts to act crazy, hoping that she will get her body back. In the middle of this, Ivel does his best to keep her calm in this moment of truth. The blonde prince then consoles his crow girl and explains that she must have simply changed back into her bird form because of excitement. He even reassures her that she can freely become a human again, as long as she practices for long enough. This is intriguing for our hero, so her lover boy decides to give her a tutorial. He places Raynell on the bed and shows off his own transformation into a glamorous wolf. Ivel is graceful, even as a beast, and it makes Raynell give him a handsome new hashtag. Of course, the crow girl goes wild with joy and blushes through her black feathers. She comments that wolves are supposed to be scary and intimidating, but that isn't the case with Ivel, because he looks so good with his golden fur. This isn't everything though, because the wolf prince proceeds to lick Raynell's beak, which is as good as a kiss in beast language. Our hero reacts funnily to the gesture and it makes Ivel laugh, after which he turns back into his human form without any effort. He explains that this trick is quite easy to pull off, but Raynell doesn't agree with him at all. This is puzzling for the blonde prince. But our hero realizes that he is a genius who finds everything to be easy. Now, Ivel tries another trick and asks Raynell to think about becoming a human because he had thought about becoming a wolf. Our hero acts grumpy at first, and it makes the blonde prince wonder if he's doing this right. However, this trick works out because Raynell becomes a human again. She is amazed by this new development and Ivel soaks in the glory by saying it was easy all along. Now, the crow girl finally gets to munch on a luxury breakfast, and she has a blast with the yummy meal. She is clearly having the time of her life, because it's been a while since she's had human food. Ivel understands this, so he allows Raynell to take her time for now. The blonde prince notices that his crow girl is able to use her cutlery quite easily, so he asks her if she's done this before. Our hero realizes that she let her emotions get the better of her, because she is supposed to keep her past life a secret. However, she is able to act fast and tells Ivel that she managed to pick up on it by watching him eat. Raynell finishes her meal and makes sure to be more careful before revealing her human traits. Ivel needs to call a maid to clean up the meal, so he asks Raynell to turn into a crow for a moment. Our hero is able to pull off this transformation smoothly, and she celebrates her new powers while her lover boy gets the table cleaned by his maid. Raynell also realizes that there are certain advantages she has as a crow, and if she puts in the right amount of effort, then she can be an extremely useful person by utilizing both her forms. She lets her thoughts get the better of her and becomes a savage crow, thinking that Ivel wants to keep her human form a secret so that he can use her as his secret weapon. The maid leaves the room, and our hero becomes human again, but Ivel apologizes to her for hiding her true form. He goes on to ask his crow girl for a favor, and she already imagines becoming a crow in black, spying for her lover boy. Things take a much darker turn when Raynell imagines becoming a maid so that she can assassinate Llewellyn. But she also confesses that she'd much rather be a spy because killing people is scary. However, Ivel doesn't want any favors for himself, but rather, he wants his crow girl to look out for herself. Raynell is amazed that her lover boy doesn't want to make use of her powers. But Ivel is a noble man and he says that he doesn't want Llewellyn to get his hands on her. He explains that his brother has always tried to steal whatever he liked, so Raynell might not be safe in the palace while she's in her human form. Raynell is touched by Ivel's concern, and gets totally smitten when he pulls her close and promises to make this palace a safe place for his crow girl, regardless of her form. The blonde prince is too charming to resist, so Raynell also acts cute and tugs at his collars. She tells her lover boy that she wants to help him achieve his dream. Her words light up a spark in Ivel's eyes and he gives his crow girl a warm, tight hug. All of this is very nice and wholesome for both of them. But the sad reality is that the couple is being spied upon by Llewellyn through his mirror demon. The third prince laughs away and comments that this situation is even better than he had imagined. What evil plans does Llewellyn have? Raynell wakes up surrounded by dark energy and wonders where she has reached. The crow girl is visibly injured and she opens her eyes to see Llewellyn scolding his archmage for hurting her. The third prince is annoyed because he didn't want Raynell to get wounded, but the archmage reasons that Raynell had put up a fight, which was why he had to hurt her. Our hero recognizes the voices in front of her, but isn't able to see the face of the archmage, whom she already assumes is ugly. In a state of panic, the archmage asks Llewellyn if he should get a priest to heal Raynell, but he says there's no need to do such a thing. This is because the third prince knows that the crow girl might run away if she heals from her injuries. Llewellyn shows off an evil face, but this only makes Raynell wonder why he's always trying to show that he's a rotten villain all the time. She comments that the third prince might be thinking of himself as a great villain simply by showing how evil and corny he really is. Our hero even imagines a hilarious image of Llewellyn jumping out of a trash can while claiming himself to be a god. The crow girl simply calls her kidnappers tacky and pathetic, after which Llewellyn tells the archmage to leave the room because he does not want to be interrupted for the time being. The archmage does as he's told and then Llewellyn walks towards Raynell. He holds her up by her wounded wing and strikes an evil pose as he calls her his new pet. Raynell wants him to let her go, but all he can hear are her cawing sounds, so he says that he'd love to punish the crow girl for scratching his nose earlier. However, he is willing to let this go if Raynell becomes a human and promises to stay by his side. Llewellyn offers her the world as he believes he is going to become the future emperor and states that an ominous bird of death would never receive such an honor anywhere else. Of course, the third prince thinks that he's being a total boss right now, but our hero thinks otherwise. She realizes that Llewellyn has fallen for her human form, which is why he has kidnapped her. This prompts Raynell to hilarious crow slap the third prince with her wing and she comments on how he doesn't have any friends. The crow girl firmly believes that a person like Llewellyn would never be able to survive in the human world because he is nothing more than a simple loser boy. The third prince isn't pleased that he has been humiliated once again by the same crow, so he throws her into a cage and mocks her for disobeying him. Llewellyn is upset because Raynell still considers Ivel to be her owner, and says that the blonde prince failed to protect her when she needed him the most. However, our hero catches on to the fact that the third prince called his brother powerless. This means that Llewellyn has no idea that the blonde prince has awakened his wolf powers, meaning Ivel's earlier assumption of the video devices not recording his transformation was correct. Raynell tells us that she could have kept a better watch on the people entering her lover boy's room if she'd known about the video devices earlier. However, it's too late now and there's no point in crying over spilled milk. Our hero figures that the Archmage was too powerful to have his spell detected, so there wasn't anything she could have done anyway. Instead, she tries to figure out a way to escape her new prison. However, there is a new difficulty at this level because Llewellyn has cast a spell on this secret room, which means that only those who are given permission can enter it. Basically, Ivel will not be able to find this room on his own, and Raynell will have to figure a way out of this mess all by herself. Now, we see Ivel, Namuel, and Windsor outside the secret room. The magician boy tries his magic but is unable to break through the dark barrier. Then, Windsor brings out his sword and tries to open the barrier with force, but even that is of no use, so all Ivel can do now is hope for the best. The blonde prince clenches his fists and frustration, and then we see some imprisoned staff members talking about what is happening in the royal palace. One of them is about to talk about Llewellyn and his evil plan, but is told to be quiet because the staff members have taken a vow to be silent on all the events occurring during the battle of the princes for the crown. It is time for the Holy Wolves to fight it out, but then the staff members are shocked to see Ivel coming down into the dungeon to see them. The blonde prince knows that there is one staff member who can enter his brother's room. The guilty maid worries that Ivel has found out about everything and has come here to punish her. However, the blonde prince states that he's aware some of the suspects might have been threatened to obey his brother's commands. The maid is a little surprised when Ivel says that he knows how difficult it is to rebel against someone who's in power. The blonde prince further states that he understands why the staff members did not follow him until now because his wolf powers had not yet awakened at the time. The maid listens with intent as Ivel explains that Llewellyn will not hesitate before abandoning even his most loyal subjects. This makes her realize that there is no guarantee for her brother to be saved by the third prince. Ivel continues to reassure everyone that he will never abandon them, and even swears it upon his life. The blonde prince now asks the staff members for their help because his brother has stolen someone very dear to him. This makes the maid wonder if Ivel is talking about his crow girl, and then she remembers that Raynell had offered her an expensive flower. She also considers the fact that a prince like Ivel values a bird of death so highly, and is even willing to talk to his staff for their help. This prompts her to raise her head, and we can only assume that she has confessed everything to Ivel, because we are immediately shifted to Llewellyn and Raynell. The third prince tells the crow girl to become a human because there's no way his brother can save her, and on top of that, her body must be in tatters because of her injuries. Now, our hero plays out another hilarious situation in her head where she considers listening to the brat prince, but changes her mind because he is too much of a loser to entertain. Her human and crow instincts both say no to the idea, and it is shown in a rather hilarious depiction of judges passing judgment. Raynell imagines pecking a million holes into Llewellyn's face, so she acts grumpy, but it only makes the third prince more aggravated. He threatens to break every bone in Raynell's body and is about to slam her cage to the floor, but before any of this can happen, the door behind Llewellyn opens up. Now, Ivel enters the room and apologizes to his crow girl for taking so long. The blonde prince also scolds his brother for playing a prank that went too far. That's when we see Ivel striking a pose with Namuel, Windsor, and the maid behind him. The blonde prince insults his brother by calling him stupid, but Llewellyn is shocked to see how his barrier was penetrated by someone who did not have his permission. Ivel admits that the barrier was a pain to deal with, but an evil plan isn't always effective. That's when the maid shows up and reveals that she was the one who let everyone inside the room. She reminds the brat prince that he had given her his permission to enter this room because he needed her to carry out his spy plans. Llewellyn is befuddled to hear this, but rather than express his frustration, he asks the maid who she is and takes it a step further by saying he doesn't usually remember trivial things. It only makes sense for a useless prince to talk like this, and the maid realizes that she was being scared of someone who is the literal definition of an idiot. Windsor takes this chance to ridicule the maid and tell her that she should have followed a real prince like Ivel. However, the blonde prince is amazed that his brother doesn't even remember the name of the person whom he had threatened to carry out his plan. It only shows how pathetic a ruler Llewellyn would be. But the third prince lashes out at Ivel and states that he is better than him simply because his wolf powers have awakened. He even mocks his brother by saying he has to rely on his staff to help him find a crow. However, Ivel proudly declares that Raynell means a lot to him, so he is not ashamed to reach out for help despite his trust issues. The blonde prince still doesn't reveal that he can transform into a wolf, and says that he has to rely on people like Namuel and Windsor to help him out while he is a human. As a matter of fact, Ivel turns it around and Llewellyn and mocks him because he had to take help as well. The third prince is clearly incapable of understanding magic, and there was no way he could have planted the spy devices in Ivel's room all by himself. The blonde prince openly insults his brother and states that he cannot do anything without the help of others. It doesn't just end there, as Ivel shuts down Llewellyn when he tries to argue with him. We see a flashback to when the third prince was a kid, and he rushed to his mother to tell her about his wolf powers awakening before Ivel. It only goes on to show that the brat prince is nothing without his powers. His mother had even told him that his achievement was good, but he still needed to get along with his brother. This only made Llewellyn upset, and he got angry with his own mother, thus proving that he is good for nothing and doesn't deserve any respect. The brat prince even scolded his mom and said that he is the most special child because his powers had awakened. He went on to call his other siblings trash, but it only led to his mother telling him that he'd wind up alone forever. Back to the present. Llewellyn has had enough of the ridicule, so he tells everyone to shut up. The third prince starts to choke Raynell and mocks Ivel for insulting him so much. He says that he is going to rip the crow girl to shreds, and then he'll see if his brother still thinks of him as a useless brat. This puts the blonde prince in a spot of bother because the initial plan was for him to distract Llewellyn long enough for Namuel and Windsor to subdue him. However, now that the third prince is transforming into a wolf and is going to attack Raynell, Ivel can't just stand there and watch. That's when he also awakens his wolf powers and presents his majestic form in front of everyone. As expected, the witnesses are all shocked to see Ivel in his wolf form as he attacks his brother and smacks him away like a bug, saving Raynell from his evil clutches. Llewellyn cannot believe his eyes as he gets totally dominated by Ivel, who knows that he's taking a huge risk by exposing his powers, but also states that Raynell is worth the effort. The wolf prince is too overpowered for Llewellyn, who looks like a little dog when compared to his brother. He admits defeat in an instant, but Ivel comments that a wolf will bite the neck of his enemy if his loved one is put into danger. He's about to put an end to the brat prince, but then the maid calls out to Ivel and tells him that Raynell needs to be treated. Ivel smacks down Llewellyn and knocks him out, after which he goes to Raynell in his human form. The lover boy hugs his crow girl and asks her if he can heal her. Our hero obviously says yes, so he takes her to his magic doctor. The crow girl is treated with ease and she is seen resting peacefully in bed. However, she doesn't wake up and it alarms Ivel, so his doctor mentions that Raynell also has mental trauma apart from the physical injuries. While it may be treated with divine power, the doctor states that the mind is a sensitive thing, so it would be best for Raynell to recover by herself. The blonde prince clenches his fists in annoyance, but maintains that he has to protect his crow girl, so he will do whatever is necessary to keep his word. This statement alarms Namuel, so he asks Ivel if he's thinking what he's thinking. The blonde prince then reveals that he is going to declare Bosgard. Now, a narrative sequence explains to us that Bosgard is an old tradition that has been passed down through the imperial family. This is basically a holy fight which is held under the supervision of the emperor. The idea is for the candidates to the throne to battle each other in their wolf forms, until one gives in and the other emerges victorious. The duel does come with the risk of injuries, but what's worse is that it can also result in the loss of life. Nobles cannot interfere with Bosgard, and the wolf who emerges victorious shall be awarded with the throne. It is because of these risks that Bosgard is only used as a last resort when 2 or more candidates have awakened their wolf powers. Now, we see Ivel walking in dramatic fashion as the gossip continues to spread over the royal mansion. News of the princes fighting in their wolf forms has made everyone wonder how Ivel was able to awaken his powers, especially since he had shown no signs of it at all until now. People are still unable to believe that such a thing has happened, and they want to see for themselves whether the blonde prince is indeed as overpowered as the rumors state. Ivel transforms into a wolf and walks with grace, after which we learn that declaring Bosgard is rather simple. Ivel only has to become a wolf to prove his holy blood, and then he has to howl in the declaration of Bosgard so that the entire imperial palace can hear it. This is no problem at all because the wolf prince howls with dominance and his roar can be heard everywhere, with the palace shaking and windows breaking. Everyone panics and runs for cover, after which we even see Wilhelm, who has managed to guess what's going on. Ivel now calls out to his brother with rage and dares him to step out into the open if he's not a coward. That's when the king steps out in his wolf form and becomes a human again after realizing his son has finally called for Bosgard. The king states the rules to Ivel and says that he cannot receive help from anyone till the battle is over. The wolf prince has no problems with this, and he wants to fight Llewellyn urgently, but the king says that the third prince has been recently injured by someone, although we all know who it is. We can see Llewellyn crying like a baby over injuries that don't really look so serious. But even then, the king says that he will have to allow his younger son some time to recover. The brat prince scolds his subjects and tells them to heal him faster, otherwise he's going to rip off their heads. Anyway, the king states that he must allow for this recovery time, because he has to permit fair play. Now, the king raises his hand and prohibits the use of any trickery or intervention until the Battle of Bosgard is done and dusted. He continues by saying all of the nobles in the royal palace are under watch, and if any of them fail to obey his orders, then death would be the only punishment served to them. While this is bad news for a trickster like Llewellyn, it isn't the best news for Namuel or Windsor either, because they will also not be able to help their prince during his time of need. Now, we move on to a lighter tone as the maid dampens a wet cloth and places it on Raynell to help with the healing process. Ivel notices this and comments on her ability to take care of others. The maid acknowledges his praise and states that she also has to look after her sick brother, so she is good with this. We also learn that the blonde prince had sent his magic doctor priest to heal the maid's brother, so she doesn't have to worry about him anymore. She states that she is forever indebted to Ivel and will do everything she can to nurse Raynell back to health. Our hero is still seen snoozing, so her lover boy hopes that she will wake up soon. Now, we move back to the alternate dimension where Raynell is in her human form. She finally opens her eyes and realizes that she's been stuck in this state of limbo for a while. Our hero panics because she knows that Ivel must be worried for her, so she scolds her crow instincts for keeping her trapped here. She even breaks the fourth wall one more time by commenting that the readers of the webtoon must have fainted by now because of their frustration with this subplot. The crow instinct says that there's still time for her to return to her human form, and it only makes Raynell angrier. She even blames the crow for allowing her to be kidnapped in the first place because she couldn't become a human and defend herself against the archmage. The crow instinct flinches its head and admits that this was somewhat its fault, but Raynell scolds it for being ignorant. She demands to be let back into her lover boy's life, but the crow instinct reasons that this might not be the best idea. Basically, Raynell might become fearful of Ivel because his face resembles that of Llewellyn. Animals are known to be cautious around their attackers, so Raynell might not be as receptive to her lover boy if she returns so soon. Our hero accepts this logic because she has seen the same thing happen in the real world with dogs. However, she also states that Ivel and Llewellyn are two completely different people and she cannot even believe that they are brothers. The crow girl goes on to scold her crow instinct for even comparing the two princes, and finds some agreement. She then holds the crow instinct and says that she will find a way to deal with her fear of Ivel if it ever appears. Raynell knows that running away from her problems are not going to solve them, but more importantly, she orders the crow instinct to listen to her, because it's the one responsible for the whole mess in the first place. With no other option to present, the crow instinct listens to Raynell and agrees to send her back to Ivel. However, it still maintains that it's a part of her, and she should not forget that its thoughts are a part of her subconscious. Now, the crow girl is finally taken back to the fantasy world and she becomes a human, after which she rushes to her Prince Charming and hugs him with joy. Raynell is so overcome with emotion that she falls down along with her lover boy, and apologizes for making him worry about her. She also thanks Ivel for coming to save her from Llewellyn, so the blonde prince hugs her out of relief. The couple doesn't realize that the maid is watching them, and she panics after seeing our hero in her human form. Her shock results in a wet mess when she drops the water bowl, so she apologizes for her mistakes. Ivel and Raynell reassure the maid that all is well, but she is still feeling guilty for allowing the crow girl to get kidnapped. Our hero consoles the maid and says that it must have taken a lot of courage for her to lead Ivel to Llewellyn. However, she makes it a little funny by comparing this action to that of a rabbit confronting a wolf. The maid is confused to hear this, but then the crow girl holds her hands and thanks her for everything she's done. This makes the maid very emotional, and then Ivel asks Raynell if she would like her to be her personal maid. The couple immediately agrees to the idea because the maid already knows their secret and it would be difficult for Llewellyn to come after the crow girl because the maid has his permission to enter his secret room. This is great news for our hero, so she hugs the maid and plays around with her while Ivel watches them. Now, Raynell asks the maid for her name, and she finally lets us know that it's Nadia. The maid girl is very thankful to the couple for showing her kindness, and she becomes a bit dramatic by saying she will never tell on them even if a sword is pointed at her neck. This even makes Ivel wonder if Nadia has learned this kind of lingo from Windsor, who is the biggest drama queen. Now, Raynell drops to the couch for some relaxation after consoling Nadia. Her lover boy also believes that the maid girl is trustworthy and will be extremely loyal to Raynell. However, our hero is hilariously surprised by the fact that Nadia doesn't want to leave her side and refuses to even take a day off. This is particularly surprising because all the other staff members have been complaining about working in front of Raynell while she was a crow. The blonde prince doesn't appreciate this, so he decides to punish the staff members, but the crow girl makes a puppy face and tells her lover boy not to do such a thing. Of course, Ivel was only joking, but he still needs to set a standard, so he decides to give everyone a fair warning. There isn't much to worry about because of the state of Bosgard, but the blonde prince needs to be wary of spies. Raynell is confused by this term because she wasn't conscious when Bosgard was declared, so her lover boy explains everything to her. As expected, the crow girl is shocked because she never came across something like this in the game she played. She enters vibration mode and feels guilty for making Ivel pull out such a move, but the blonde prince reassures her that it was going to happen sooner or later. He goes on to caress Raynell's cheeks, but she starts twitching uncontrollably. This makes her remember what her crow instinct had said about fearing those who resemble her attacker. Ivel seems to understand this, so he uses his wolf form to console his princess. Raynell is then told that they have time to deal with this because Llewellyn has asked for extra time to recover from his injury. Now, the blonde prince tells Raynell that she can pour her heart out to him, so she hugs her lover boy and starts crying out of love. She starts talking about how scared she was when she was captured, but then we move to Windsor, who is fighting the other knights with a serious rage. A flashback shows Windsor confronting Namuel because the magician boy didn't react to Ivel's wolf transformation with shock. He explains that he had given a power berry to the blonde prince, so he assumes it was the berry that gave him his wolf powers. However, this makes Windsor upset because he believes that his prince doesn't trust him despite him pledging his life towards his protection. He explains to us that he's always wanted to be Ivel's knight, and it took him a lot of effort to gain his trust, especially after he had sealed himself off from others when he was a child. Windsor convinces himself that this must be a misunderstanding because Ivel is still keeping him by his side. He enters the blonde prince's room and sees him in his wolf form with Raynell, who is in her crow form. This makes Windsor even more jealous of the crow girl, but then Ivel transforms into his human body and asks him why he's feeling upset. Now, Windsor takes us to a flashback where he was asked to serve Llewellyn instead of Ivel due to his exceptional skills. Of course, the blonde prince didn't have his wolf powers then, but Windsor still chose to serve him over the third prince. This led everyone to mock the knight for being stubborn. And then we move forward to the time when Ivel was attacked by Wilhelm and his men. Windsor wanted to go find his prince and even ignored the words of the nobles who had asked him to change sides while he still could. All of his efforts were eventually a waste because Ivel came back safe with a crow and has been making strange decisions ever since then. Now, we're back to the present, and Windsor asks Ivel why he risked his secret for Raynell. He goes on to say that he has sworn his devotion to the blonde prince, but was still not informed about his wolf powers awakening. What's more baffling is the fact that Ivel transformed into a wolf in front of everyone, just to save his crow girl from harm. The blonde prince understands what his knight is saying, so he apologizes for his behavior and says that he's well aware of how important Windsor is to him. He appreciates how much the night warrior has sacrificed for him, even at a time when he had no powers. However, Ivel maintains that he had to become secretive because of the attack that was planned on him. Then, he proceeds to the topic of Raynell and explains that while Windsor might find it odd that he loves a crow so much, she means the world to him. Our hero shows her human form to Windsor, and he is shocked beyond imagination, even thinking of her to be a demon bird. Raynell doesn't know if this is a good idea, but her lover boy asks her to change back into a crow for now. Now, the blonde prince tells Windsor that Raynell had eaten Namuel's power berry, which is why she can shift bodies now. She was the one who had saved him from the evil soldiers and has stuck with him all the time since then. Ivel then tells Windsor that keeping Raynell's identity a secret is extremely important to him and he wants his knight to protect her. This showcases how much Ivel trusts Windsor. And even the night warrior explains to us that the blonde prince was always cold to women. This made him guard him against pretty ladies all the time. But now that he has been asked to protect Raynell, it signifies a level of trust which is beyond measure. Windsor's anxiety melts away like snow on a sunny day, and he starts imagining all kinds of fantasies wherein he's protecting Ivel and Raynell from danger. He also realizes that the couple might get married and give birth to cute children who will eventually ask him to teach them sword fighting. This honor is too much for Windsor to handle, so he has another breakdown and excessively promises to protect and guard Ivel and Raynell. He swears his life on this, and his words are so loud that Raynell willingly accepts the death of her earbuds. Ivel calms him down, and then Windsor says that he must be even more loyal to his prince. He tries to read up on Boskert to offer assistance to Ivel, but is unable to find anything of use. Windsor goes crazy because it's hard to believe such an important practice is not covered in the history books. But then Namuel hilariously humbles him by finding some information in his own book. However, it's just a single sentence that everyone already knows, and it unleashes Windsor's inner beast, which wants to slice up the book for making him look like a fool. Namuel brings him back to his senses, and then Wilhelm shows up to offer his support. Neither Namuel nor Windsor is interested in listening to him, and Wilhelm understands why. However, he says he's their best hope for understanding Boskert because he knows that the current emperor was the last one to win this challenge. Is Wilhelm going to expose some dirty secret?